Hello, hello. Okay, hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is going to be a very intimate conversation, but we are live streaming. So we're about to start the live stream, or we've already started it. Maybe. So I am Diliana Alexander. For those of you who don't know me, co-founder of FilmGate Miami. As you know, thank you. As you know, we're a nonprofit organization that has existed for 15 years, supporting independent creators. I'm really happy to say that a few of those independent creators are in the audience as our fellows. So thank you, fellows. Can you just wave? We have 12 feature films in development. There we go. There we go. When I first moved here in 2009, Miami was at the top three location, or Florida was the top three location for filmmaking. I don't think we're in the top 300 at the moment. So there's a huge change that has happened. So we are hoping that today, with the conversation that we'll have, and I know many people in Florida trying to create some kind of support for filmmaking, the entertainment industry, and also in all gaming, immersive, post production, so the entire range of the entertainment industry, to bring it back to Florida, to bring it back to South Florida, and to bring it back to Miami as well. We have amazing speakers. We also have awesome people in the audience, and I'm gonna just kind of call out a few. We have Monica Mateus Salinas, Commissioner Mateus Salinas. We have Thank you, Monica. We have Idis from the Miami-Dade County office representing the mayor of the Mil Cava. Thank you so much. We have Alan, who is an entertainment attorney. We have Alex from the Greater Convention and Visitors Bureau. We have Jeannie from the film office. We have Alexis Garcia. Thank you so much, Alexis, for being here. Awesome producer. MJ Green from the DDA is coming, acting director of the Downtown Development Authority, is going to be here soon as well. So, but before we get with the conversation with this awesome group of people, I wanted to introduce our awesome speakers to the front, starting with Tony Armour. Tony Armour has been a producer for a really long time. He's also been in the governing of film for a long time. He's been a film commissioner in Texas and also in St. Pete's Clearwater. He just finished an independent feature film. He is the vice president of U.S. Film. So it's amazing to have him here. We started talking together how to bring we're gonna decide if we're gonna call it incentives or something else to Florida, but we're gonna bring support back to Florida. So I think winds are changing.
Thank you.
And the United States. So Tony, without further ado, please introduce who you have invited here to speak with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us. Like Diliana said, we were having a conversation a few months ago and said that we really should put together some sort of a talk with film commissioners and people that have the power to make some things happen in the state of Florida. And so we have some great guests assembled today. I'm going to start down on the end with Josh Rogan. I'll let Josh do the full intro, but Josh has come in from Washington, D.C., via another conference he was just in Vegas. And Josh, why don't you give your title and everything and tell us who you are and what you do?
Hello, everybody. Is this on? It working? Okay, so thank you, Tony, and Josh Rogan with the Motion Picture Association. I do federal government relations or lobbying and work with the Senate and the House and the White House on policies that impact this industry. So really happy to be here, Tony.
And Chad.
Hi, my name's Chad Newman. I'm the film commissioner for the Florida Keys. Live down in Key West. It's great to be here today. When you leave Miami and you head to Key West, you cross 42 bridges. So I'm responsible for all those bridges and everything in between. Anyways, I'd love to talk to anyone who's interested in coming down to talk about filming in the Florida Keys.
And AJ.
Hi, good morning, everyone. AJ Alberto Jordat. I am the Director of Operations at the Palm Beach County Film and Television Commission. Happy to be here with you all. If you're not familiar with our region, the very north of our county is Jupiter, and we stretch 47 miles of pristine coastline all the way to the south in Boca Raton. And of course, we go all the way out west to Lake Okeechobee, largest county here in the state of Florida, one of the largest. In fact, we're larger than some states in the country. So it's got a real diverse location. If you all want to learn about Palm Beach County, look forward to talking to you some more.
Yeah, and so overall, we're going to talk a little bit about the state of the industry nationally and Florida in general. As Diliana said, I was the film commissioner in St. Pete Clearwater for about 9 years, and then Dallas recruited me away, and I took over Dallas for a little while. But my house, my girlfriend, and dog are all in Clearwater, so it was too much flying back and forth. So I'm back in Florida full time, and then as Diliana mentioned as well, we work pretty closely with Josh with Film USA, which is our national film commission organization working on a potential national film incentive, which would be great not just for Florida but for everywhere else. But we'll get a little bit more into that. But as I want to get started here, we all know that there are no film incentives in the state of Florida, and there haven't been for a long time. And as Diliana mentioned, Florida at one point in time was the number 3 production state in the country behind New York and California. And then as all of the incentives started growing everywhere else, we started to dwindle. We had an incentive for a little while. That went away for a variety of reasons at the state level, and then a lot of the regions around the state started creating their own regional incentives, and that is really kind of what everything has grown into at this point, are regionally based incentives around the state of Florida that everybody kind of has to piecemeal work with. And because of that, and because they're all sort of government funded and government based, depending on the county or the area that you're in, you're not necessarily able to attract like a full big production like we've been able to do in the past. So everybody knows that the most recent Bad Boys film shot here, but they really shot in Georgia, and they spent 2 weeks in Miami, Fort Lauderdale area shooting. And the reason for that is no state incentive, and without that state incentive, you're very limited as what you can do. You're getting people for a short period of time. And so I guess we'll start down in the end there, Josh, with you, and let's talk a little bit about kind of what we're looking at from a national perspective right now.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate everyone being here. And I just so what I do is I work every day on the idea of the federal film incentive, and that would be a game changer for this country and for Florida. Foreign jurisdictions have aggressive tax policies to draw productions. So they're drawing productions to Canada, to UK, to Australia, you name it. And the name of the game is incentives. You have to have some sort of incentives to draw the production, because when I speak, the Motion Picture Association, our members are top 7 studios, and when they are picking their location, they take very seriously the impact of incentives, because they can do more with their money if they have incentives. So if America is serious about keeping filmmaking home, after all, we invented the industry, we should be shooting in America and in Florida whenever possible. We need a federal film incentive. And the way that would operate is it would sit stacked on top of state incentives. So Georgia would be even more competitive. But also, if you don't have incentives, Florida, for example, right now, you get you in the game, because you would have 15 or 20% from the federal, maybe combining with some of the city or municipality film incentives, and it would chase the game. It would probably also encourage Florida to pass the rum incentive. So we are working hard on that. I'm a Democrat. I worked actually for 2 members of South Florida for 20 years on the Hill, so very familiar with Florida. But right now we have, Democrats are largely interested in this concept. So what most of the work is bringing Republicans along and bringing President Trump along. And I'm not a big fan of President Trump politically, but he's in the White House, and we need him. If we're gonna pass a federal film incentive, we need the president's support and endorsement. And he actually is interested in entertainment. He cares about the industry. He has, put out messages that are unhelpful about tariffing the industry. But we've worked closely with the White House, and we're trying. The staff there is very excited about the idea of the federal incentive, and so we're working. I'm recruiting conservative actors whenever I interact with them to have them lobby the White House, and we're starting to make progress on Capitol Hill. And again, this would be a game changer for America, but we need to do it, because more and more production will just go overseas unless we get competitive. And the last thing I would say is that these jurisdictions like the UK, like Australia, and Canada, they don't give money away they don't just like giving money away. They do these programs because they draw tremendous revenue. $1 million a day a major film will inject as a local economy. So you get your money back. Actually, the MPA, we work closely with Film USA and Tony's group because it's so important to talk to the local commissioners and understand on the ground. But we're working. We have the largest coalition, I think, in the industry's history. All the unions, all the other voices, directors, producers, Film USA, and we're working really hard on it. And, it's hard to do anything in Washington, but I actually do think this is an issue that a Democratic Congress and this president should work on together. There's a narrow list of issues that's possible on, and actually the federal and Film Senate is part of that. So, have to talk more about it, but that's kind of the overview. And we're making slight progress, and but hopefully we can bring this home at some point.
Great, thank you. And so like we mentioned, a lot of the local municipalities and everything have stepped up. Unfortunately, Miami does not have an incentive right now or a film commissioner, if I'm correct. I don't want to speak out of turn, but is that correct, Diliana? I'm not saying that incorrectly, that Miami currently doesn't have a film commissioner or an incentive program like a lot of the areas around the state? Right. Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit, but that obviously.
From the Miami State Film Office, she's here in the audience, Virginia. Oh, there she is. So she can speak to what Miami-Dade County is doing throughout the film office. It's picking out right now, and we can have a conversation.
Great. And so, but we do have some regions that do have incentives here or are developing new incentives that are represented on the panel. So, Chad, why don't you talk a little bit first about Florida Keys, what you've had going on down there recently, because you have had some good projects coming through the Keys. And on top of that, what you're developing as far as a regional incentive down there.
Sure. So, incentives are very, very important. We had Roadhouse that was set in the Florida Keys that filmed in the Dominican Republic because they have a great incentive. So here's a great show on Amazon, spent a lot of money. All of it went to the DR. They filmed one day in the Florida Keys, which is very disappointing. We just had Bad Monkey. Bad Monkey season 1 was shot between Miami and the Florida Keys. They got sucked over to California for season 2, but they did come back for about a month or so filming in directly in Florida in the Key West area. And then they just got picked up for season 3. Again, we're going to probably film it in LA and then do the same kind of deal. But so it's this. There are places around Florida that do have incentives. Fort Lauderdale has one. Is West Palm?
You got, yes.
We'll talk about that in a second. I'm sure we'll have some interesting information. Tampa, Jacksonville, Orlando just got a big incentive. So there are places that do have incentives. I have a small pilot program I'm working with. I'm trying to show, what is possible in the Florida Keys. So that's kind of where I'm going. We're trying to push, making whatever push we can. And then that's how you, at least if you have something to offer, then at least you have a conversation. If you're able to have, first question is always like, what's your incentive? If you have nothing, conversation is over and they just move on. So it's great to be able to have at least something. Well, let me tell you what I have. And then that gets the ball rolling. Might not be exactly what they're looking for, but at least you can have that conversation. So that's what I think is really important. And we've been pushing with a member of Film Florida, and we've been pushing for a long time to try to get incentives back in the state. And it's an uphill battle, but we're rolling that hill up, rolling that stone up the hill every legislative session. So we'll see what happens this coming month.
Can I ask a question? Is this a
Yes, yeah, sure.
okay, wonderful? Because keep hearing you guys say film incentives, and I know what incentives are, everybody. But I need to know, can you be a little bit more specific? Do you mean fee waivers? Do you mean just a monetary
Cash, a monetary, yeah.
Because I'll tell you from the city of Miami Beach, I am a commissioner in the city of Miami Beach, and I'm happy to explore film incentives. But I need to tell me more. What do these municipalities do more specifically? Because again, cash sponsorship is tough, right? I'm just writing a check, but we could do a fee waiver, or we could do a permit waiver, or we could do other things, but my fear is that it won't be enough.
Yeah.
So can you go back and tell me, like in the Keys, you said there was one day they filmed and they went to DR.
Yeah.
What was the DR offering them and what were the Keys offering them, so I can figure out how to match that?
Sure.
You know, whatever films come to Miami.
At that point, we didn't have anything in the Florida Keys. My whole incentives before this pilot program that I have was I'll literally buy you a key lime pie if you come on the field there, and that works to a certain extent, but not enough because they want cash. Apparently, meringue is not good enough for these people. And so, but now I have a small incentive. We can, we're set differently because our incentive is based on bed tax money. And so we have to set it up in a way, it's not economic development. A lot of incentives are set up as economic development. They use those funds because they want people to work. And this is something that I think a lot of the legislatures in Tallahassee don't understand. They look at a big movie coming, let's say Bad Monkey. That they're looking at all these big Hollywood actors and producers. Why are we giving them money? But it's not those guys. It's the security guards. It's the catering. It's the extras. It's going to Home Depot and buying plywood. All of that, it happens and raises, but they spend a lot of money in our state when they're here filming. And so the legislatures don't get that.
Yeah, the structure. Yeah, I know where you want to ask question wise, and so it's structured differently depending on where you're at. So St. Pete Clearwater, it was tourism based. So 6% bed tax in Pinellas County. That funding goes to Visit St. Pete Clearwater, and then as film commissioner, when I started, the overall budget of the entire office was $100,000 a year. When I left, it was almost $3 million a year. And as the bed tax increased, I kept asking for more money for our county incentive. And the way that I created that program and where it worked that is because the money was tourism based and based on state statute, it can only be spent on tourism promotion. We would do it as a marketing grant to the production based on what they were giving us marketing wise in return. Did we see a sign that says St. Petersburg in the film? Did we get behind the scenes videos? Did we have interviews with the director like I did with Tim Burton saying how great it was to shoot in the area? So we build a list of marketing deliverables. And so that's the way a lot of the tourism based ones are similar. Orange County's new one is set up off of that. They base it on kind of what I created there. Tampa, same thing because they're tourism based as well. Chad's going to be similar in the Keys. We'll let you talk about yours in just a second. And then you have other areas, if they are a part of economic development, then that money comes from somewhere else. And so you've got to figure out where that comes from. Or if you're Miami Beach, where does that money come from? And structurally how it typically works is, like Josh mentioned, studio or somebody will come in and say, hey, I've got this film. It's a $10 million film. We're getting 30% from Ohio or Georgia cash back on what we do. And states are structured a little differently. Some are transferable tax credits, and so it's a tax credit based on, income tax revenue that comes in. Some are refundable tax credits. Some are cash grants. Texas's new program, I'm familiar with that because of my time in Dallas. That is because Texas is very similar to Florida, no income tax. And so that is essentially a cash rebate program in Texas as well. And so it depends on the structure where you're going, but the way projects are financed, whether it's an independent project or a studio project, they're just looking at that cash number and what does that take off of the overall cash that they have to spend on a project. And so a lot of what we get in Florida is you get that project for a day or a week or a month because it doesn't do something on a $100 million project. You can't give one project $30 million, right, from a regional thing. So what we would do in St. Pete, and I know what Tyler does in Tampa, is concentrated on a lot of small independent films. I had 18 feature films in 2022 because there were a lot of $500,000 Lifetime Channel films, and I did a bunch of Hallmark Channel films. And so you find a niche depending on what your incentive is and how much you can give. Then when you have those bigger projects, the Bad Monkeys of the world, and I know Sandy in Fort Lauderdale, I think she can do up to $1 million if it's a big project, and they make it scalable depending on how many crew you're hiring. And so you don't have to, if you're Miami Beach, you don't have to put a bucket of $10 or $20 million together. Right, you don't have it. But if you've got $1 million per year or something, which is still a big number, you can still piece that out and you can get a lot of great small independent films, which helps support your crew base and keeps your crew working. It trains young and upcoming crew to be able to maintain their skill levels so that you don't have brain drain where they're leaving and going to other areas as they're starting to come up in the industry. It helps support local businesses because even though you have that $1 million incentive, you might get 10 projects that come in and take that. And so now you've got 10 projects, each shooting, each spending money, each doing something because they want to shoot in Miami Beach, because you can't duplicate that look anywhere. And so you just have to, depending on your market, you've got to be scalable on and realistic on what you're looking for and how you do it.
Sure. Just one last question. I promise I'll shut up for now. Can anybody outline the Miami-Dade County film incentives, what they were, so that way I can understand? Does anybody know?
Loosely, yes. Jeannie, you may know since you work at the office, but it was, I believe they previously were $10 million that was in a bucket for Miami-Dade County. I don't know exactly how that was split up or was managed. I don't know if you know, Jeannie.
A smaller program that was and it was 2017. And then we had a high impact film fund program, which was up to 5 million spend. But both of those programs are non-existent because the funding got pulled for them. So
Hopefully we can keep going and we'll answer a little more.
Yeah,
you
it
know,
would be also
questions.
interesting to explore us, since obviously this is going to become a conversation, and it's like we have great people on all sides, to explore where maybe some of the funding can come from if we know that there's big shortfalls in the budgets of the cities because of maybe even property taxes and what's happening now. So are there any other opportunities? Like, for example, I think Orlando gets their incentives from the tourism
It's
industry.
tourism, yeah.
Could it be the developer industry? Whoever benefits.
I'll have some comments on that as well. I know Josh has something to say. We want to let AJ hop in here and explain what they do in Palm Beaches as well.
Yeah, I'll start by saying this, and it might be an unpopular opinion, but I wish all incentives would go away everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. If there were no incentives and we could just compete, one-on-one for what we have, I think that would be fantastic. Particularly for city commissioners who are looking at ad valorem shortfalls here with property taxes and homesteads going up. Could be very challenging. And so let's go to Palm Beach County, right, where we do not currently have an incentive program in the traditional sense. And quite frankly, we haven't needed it, right? No doubt incentives are important, like everybody has mentioned up here. But we've tracked for the last 4 years record-breaking numbers year after year after year. Last year, we tracked $260 million in production spend. These are visiting production companies, our local infrastructure. We do surveys every year, and what do we find out? Hey, that's a $250 million industry that we got here. That's not too shabby. I was just at Tribeca in New York, where I saw their industry was like $8 billion. So we're a far cry from that $8 billion. But $250 million is nothing to sneeze at, especially when you don't have an incentive, right? And so I'll just start by that. No, we've done very well without incentives. And we have some creators here in the room. I'll ask this question. Could you just raise your hand if you're a creator? Wonderful. All right. How many of you right now are working on a project? Raise your hand if it's over $400,000. All right. So of all those hands, we've got 3 people who would probably qualify for an incentive, right? Because there's your minimum spend. A lot of those are baseline there. So every other one of you wouldn't even qualify anyways. So what do I do in Palm Beach County that kind of separates us from the others? Rather than focus on an incentive or lack of incentive, although we are working on something, we've, over the years, focused on service. Because when you can't get $1 out of me, what can you get out of me? The networks that I have, the opportunities that I can create for you, the soft incentives. So like the waiver of permitting fees, all our permits are at no cost, right? So our county allows us to do that. But waiving of location fees, waiving of any other items that we can do to help offset any costs that productions may have, or just make it easier for you to work in our backyard. So that's what we've focused on, is service. And then some years ago, 2017, right? So the Florida film incentive program that existed sunset back in 2016, right? Am I right? Yeah, 2016. Yeah. And I had come on board in the film commission space 2015, so I was kind of new. About a year later, everybody's kind of thinking, what are we going to do? And like other film offices, we are funded through bed taxes. And so we're under the tourism department. And they had a pot of money to incentivize some sort of production that they entrusted us with. And our film commissioner at the time, and our current film commissioner, who was the deputy film commissioner at the time, Michelle Hillary, they had the foresight to say, well, let's use these tourism dollars and incentivize tourism-focused productions. So if any of you are in here old enough to remember the Samantha Browns, the Travel Channel before was Paranormal Activity, right? When they actually showed travel content.
Yeah.
All right. We started incentivizing those programs. Come to the Palm Beaches, do dedicated episodes on our destination. Because again, our money's coming from tourism. Let's create content that puts heads in beds. And what we're paying for is not the creation of this content. We're paying for the distribution because Burt Wolf, Samantha Brown, Peter Greenberg, these people are on PBS National or CBS. Peter Greenberg's a CBS's travel detective nationwide. So we partnered with those types of productions to do content. And today we have a library of over 140, maybe closer to 150 hours. We're adding 20 plus hours every year. These programs, after they air over, traditional networks, we then own the distribution rights to them. And so we can repurpose it for our channel, which is now streaming in like 5,000 hotel rooms in Palm Beach County. We're eyeing a hotel here in Miami to, maybe attract some of your Miami folk to come up to the Palm Beaches. And so that's what we did. We invested in tourism programming. And like I said, we've seen 5 years of record-breaking growth, and our tourism partners have seen on the tourism side record-breaking numbers of visitation, hotel stays, etc. And so that's the space we lived in, right? But then what are the challenges? Well, other areas of the state, before Orlando, which just did it a couple years ago, Fort Lauderdale, they created their own incentive program. And so when these different regions started creating programs or really putting their programs to use, now we see where the narrative projects are going. So we're still, in unscripted and in commercial brand content, we're still rocking, but we're seeing the RJ Deckers of the world or the MIAs going to Fort Lauderdale because they do have some of those dollars. We get some of the trickle down or trickle up effect of it, if you will. But we are in the process. So back to incentives and what we got in Palm Beach County. We got that tourism program, but we are working on developing something that is going to further support production outside of that tourism space. So we're working on something that is going to be usable, scalable, also something that is going to be stackable so that you can work in different regions of the state, take advantage of a regional incentive that a neighbor might have, and come to us and also stack some dollars there. Or from other states, whatever. So this is in its infancy. I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't know, but we're working on something. What I could tell you is we do have the support of our elected officials, our Board of County Commissioners, administration. And so we're very excited for the future. But back to the tourism portion, right? People are like, well, does that work for me? It works for a lot of our creatives because what they do is they take advantage of the program that we have to fund their passion projects that they got. So, I don't have a movie incentive, but they want to make movies. They have scripts in their head, but they do our tourism programming, take that funding and apply it to their personal projects, right? Because again, most of them are like you guys. They don't have $400,000 budgets. They wouldn't qualify for an incentive anyways.
Josh, you had a few things you wanted to
discuss how a federal incentive would be structured, and that would essentially be a percentage of your spend on your workforce. So the federal idea is tied to workforce. There would also be a minimum spend level. It could be $1 million or so. But again, the goal of the federal incentive would be to put people to work, and so these 20% difference would make an enormous difference in where they cite movies. And then that has such carryover effects to local workers, the local folks here in Florida that want to be in the industry. So I just, incentives can be frustrating, but that's the world we live in. So if you're going to get in the game, you have to have the most aggressive policy, and you make your money back. And it's sometimes hard to convince legislators to do that. And like you said, Chad, they can make the argument this is going to rich directors and stars, but these stars carry with them, like Tom Cruise carries with him 500 employees that'll be put to work because he's making a movie. So it's really not going to these celebrities or it's empowering local workforces is really what it does.
And no doubt, as I mentioned earlier, incentives are indeed important, right? Because you're operating in a landscape where they exist. I said I wish they didn't, but the fact that they do, you got to do something about it. And you mentioned that the incentives would be tied to like workforce, right? A lot of these incentives are particularly the ones that are funded through ad valorem dollars or economic development. In our case for Palm Beach County, as we work on things and as you Miami filmmakers keep an eye on what we're doing, it's not just going to be tied to workforce, but it's going to be tied to your spend within the community. So if you're using our local restaurants for catering, if you're using our first responders, police, whatever, for off-duty work, staying at our hotels, any expenditures that you're doing related to your production will be eligible for some sort of reimbursement. And so it's not just going to be workforce tied to how many people are from your area working. It's how much you're spending in our community. And based on your production spend, there'll be a percentage that you get back.
Yeah. And I'm going to get to your question next first, but I'm sorry, I forgot your name again. Monica. Monica, you know, you had mentioned like alternate ways besides, you know, the typical property tax and things like that. There are some unique things that, for example, the city of St. Pete, what they're doing right now from an arts perspective is, you know, I drove into Miami and I saw a lot of cranes. There's a lot of cranes. There's a lot of development taking place, and there's a lot of development in other parts of Florida. You know, city of St. Pete is working directly with the developers and saying, hey, we want you to give a small percentage of what you're spending on development of this project into an arts fund that the city would manage that then goes to the arts grant that the city does. And so creative things like that of, you know, saying to the developers that are spending a lot of money in the area, hey, you know, it's hard to say, hey, we're going to create a new tax and throw it on developers. That, you know, makes a lot of people mad. But there are ways of working with developers or working with the private businesses that are spending a lot of money to put something into a bucket or a pool that can then, you know, be used in certain ways. And one could be, you know, incentivizing film. And so you had a question.
Yeah, Josh, is there any reference or expected impact on the 168, 181 use if there were to be?
And you may want to explain, Josh, 181 and 168 for everyone as well before.
Yeah, I'm not.
But don't put them to sleep.
Yeah, 181 I'm familiar with. I'm not as familiar with the other.
168 is just being used right now, while 181 is
Okay.
It's about similar enough idea.
Okay.
And used on U.S. productions as an incentive, as a piece of the capital stack.
Yeah,
So-
and so he's talking about Section 181, which is a chunk of tax code, essentially. Super boring, but everyone's been using this for 20 years to help as a de facto
Yeah.
incentive.
So Section 181, without boring you, essentially when you make a movie, as a lot of you know, it can sit on the shelf for a long time, and you don't officially put it in service until you're, you know, it's streaming or, but again, it could sit on the shelf for 6 to 8 months. And so what 181 was structured to do was, you know, help you realize you know, not wait until you, and it helps you on your taxes essentially, because you can deduct immediately rather than until it's put in service. So this Section 181 is the only federal tax item that benefits film and television production, and currently it has fallen out of law. So we are working, in addition to the federal incentive, we're working to try to reauthorize Section 181. You know, Congress is complicated at the moment, and Republicans are mad at Democrats. Democrats are mad at Republicans. This is one of the items they need to have cooperation to get through. So there still is a chance, you know, in the lame duck period that we can reauthorize 181. It's much, much cheaper than a federal incentive. And we just, as we're competing globally, we just don't want our domestic film market to get even worse, which has happened when 181 has kind of fallen out of law. So we're trying to do both things. We're trying to pass a federal incentive. That's probably more of a long-term goal, but also Section 181, we're hoping there's a chance it can be reauthorized at the end of the year in the lame duck period. But
So what's 160?
I think that is what
168. 168. Is this here? Yeah. Okay. 168 is in the big beautiful bill. It's got so it is current, and it does apply to entertainment. The interpretation and application of that to films got some ambiguities, but so did 181. So it's being used by a lot of the 181 brokers and investors that had been using 181.
So yeah, and 181, yeah. So 181 could sit next to a film incentive. They they can both be hopefully utilized. The film incentive will change behavior. It'll change where major studios shoot. So that's why it's so important. So if you're trying to bring major film work that employs a lot of local people, we really need the federal film incentive. Section 181 is definitely helpful, especially for independent filmmakers that are trying to use credits and other. But the game changer would be the federal incentive.
Yes.
I just some budget about Long Beach. Sir, what is the minimum spend to be able to qualify for anything? Because obviously, as like a micro budget filmmaker, I'm not gonna have $400,000. But if I wanted to go to Palm Beach and do my next short, how much do I have to spend in order to get any of that reimbursed or any kind of like?
And the minimums are different in every area. So we'll let him talk about Palm Beach and talk Chad about what he's developing, and I can mention briefly the other areas as well.
So with the current program that we have for tourism driven programming, there's no minimum spend there. Basically, these are shows that are already in production, already have distribution out in the marketplace. And so there's usually a figure attached to creating this half-hour episode. In a lot of cases, it's in that six-figure space. And we are sponsoring. Every production is different. Every situation is a custom situation in terms of what we're getting. There's not a minimum spend scenario there. But if you're talking six-figure budget, probably 30, 40, 45, up to 50% sponsorship of that. And then we have other productions that are smaller, more local productions with shows airing on networks like WSFL TV here in Broward, Miami. And those shows might be $25,000 to produce, and we're probably picking up close to 100% of it. We're not looking to be your sole sponsor. If you have these types of programs, we obviously want you to have partnerships, other people with skin in the game. But again, every situation is a custom situation, and we can work with you. For you creatives who are looking at your personal projects outside of that space, we're hammering out those details. I think that there's got to be a minimum in place. I agree with my colleagues who do this. I don't know that $400,000 is right, because if I'm sitting in this room and I'm doing that polling, there's only three of you. If I set my minimum 400,000 that I'd, be reaching out to. So I'm hoping that we set the bar somewhere that is attainable so that more people can take advantage of it. And then I know that some of these places, and we're looking at it too, have finishy funds or grants. So they might not be incentives, but for smaller projects, they might have $10,000 grants. I think Fort Lauderdale, Miami, I think used to do that. And so stay tuned, follow us. But yeah, there'll be a minimum spend. I don't know what it is yet.
Chad, what are you looking at in the Keys?
So our system is set up very similar to St. Pete. It's a marketing grant because the way the money has to be spent is to advertise. So we come in, you do your project, we sign a deal. Now we'll probably have to do some sort of it has to get some sort of distribution somewheres. But my whole idea is to go after stuff that doesn't normally qualify for incentives. So like music videos, maybe commercials, a bunch of those kind of things. We do either do a contract, or we spell everything out, or we also have this system set up so we could do after the fact, because a lot of shows come in and they're moving quick. They don't have time to pre-do stuff. They're, but I want to be able to fund them, give them some money after the fact. And then it's a post thing. It'll be, can't give any upfront money, but once it airs somewhere, as you can prove X amount of people saw it, then we can certainly put, give some dollars to that. And that's the plan for me. And, one of the things is, for me, music videos are great, smaller productions, because again, we want to help incentivize that stuff, but you just never know. We had a Bad Bunny commercial, music video that shot in the Florida Keys. And I swear the last time I checked, it had over 800 million views. And that moves the needle, certainly for my film commissioners, our county commissioners. They see the value in all that.
Yeah, because it really is about eyeballs. And so, we talk a lot about feature film, television, things like that, but you forget in the digital space, you can have a music video that's, 800 million views or whatever it is. And you asked about minimums. I think St. Pete Clearwater right now is a $100,000 minimum. Tampa, Tyler doesn't have a minimum. He just really evaluates things on a project by project basis. Short films aren't typically something that qualifies. Those are usually something you can get grants from certain arts agencies, depending on, where they are. Orlando's incentive, I think it's probably in that 100K range for a minimum as well. And Orlando's new one is 25 million over 5 years, so 5 million per year. So they've got a pretty robust program now that they're getting aggressive with. But again, all tourism based, and certain ones you hit for Orlando. I say Orlando, but it's really Orange County. All the money has to be spent in Orange County. They're only basing the incentive on what's spent in the county itself. When you talk about like St. Pete, Clearwater, and Tampa, it's really the same market. It's the Tampa Bay region. And so the two counties work well together, and you can actually stack both those counties, which is part of the reason that Tyler and I were so successful, is being able to stack that incentive. You getting, 10 to 20% from Pinellas County, you get another 10, 20 from Tampa, and you can lean into that. Tyler's leaning heavy into verticals right now. And so the vertical stuff is become very popular and drives a lot of eyeballs. And so depending on the market and depending who's kind of in charge in that market, you can get really creative where you don't have to give big chunks of cash to get project and to get a lot of eyeballs. Obviously, what you guys do with tourism is, super hyper tourism focused with the travel content. So there's a lot of ways to kind of make things happen to grow your industry, because those people that are working on those small projects, verticals, Lifetime channel films that are fresh out of, film school or whatever else, or just getting started, once they enjoy working in an area and being in that area, they continue to do more, and they want to bring the larger projects as they grow in their career too. So it's really not just about the money at that time, but about building your infrastructure and about, building your creators that are there to continue to do it in your area as well.
I think I think this is now we're getting into the portion of let's have a conversation. So mics are going to start floating. I did want to pick on someone, if you don't mind, somebody that's really special. This is the Downtown Development Authority Acting Director, MJ Green. And I wanted him to say a few words because they have been supporting FilmGate for a long time. But what is your goal for the DDA and the goal production? But I would say educate, because the type business of educate.
Sure. Hello. Thank you. My name is MJ Green. I am the acting CEO for the Miami Downtown Development Authority. I actually want to welcome you guys all to the beautiful downtown area. I've been lucky enough to, not only is my brother a filmmaker, but I worked at the county and worked closely with the Film and Entertainment Department. I think that every time you put this beautiful woman that is South Florida on TV, I do think that you see the economic momentum move forward, whether that was with Scarface, Bad Boys, and I would argue that the pandemic, you saw it on people's phones. So I am very bullish on vertical presentations. I think that in some of the things that you'll say or that you've heard today, everything is extremely interconnected. The way in which you vote affects municipalities, counties, states' budgets. Those budgets, if they are tight, as you can see at the county, things that will be cut first are probably film and entertainment and those things. But I think that, the DDA, we look to continue to support grassroots organizations that are doing good work, and the creatives. In July, we have our Downtown Creative Collaborator Grants, and I don't want to put Diliana's information out there too much, but FilmGate has been a recipient of that for quite some time. It's grants up to $50,000, and it is pretty broad-based. As long as you are doing something that is creative, good for people, and it's downtown, we have a grant process that is there for you. The grants, again, range all the way up to $50,000, and then we have legacy recipients like FilmGate who have received that money year over year over year. We'll also host a host of business incentives, but I really want to talk about film right now. The more we have continued to try to figure out where our place is in that. Some of it is in our creative collaborator grants, but also some of it is in granting dollars for independent filmmakers to make much smaller films that are focused on downtown. The landscape of filmmaking is drastically changing. The technology continues to get better. Miami is full of amazing creatives. It always has been. Event producers, all of those different things. And we really want to support those individuals. But we also talk to folks like Diliana, Alex, and everybody else on how we can best do that. How do we connect the dots and how do we provide capital to be able to do it? It is important. We have a very, very strict boundary that is Brickell, downtown, the Arts and Entertainment District, and a little bit of Edgewater. We can't do anything outside of that. If you do something on the beach, great for you, has little to do with me. Great for her as well. But you could just do a portion of it here, do a portion of it there. I think that I'll talk a little bit about my personal opinions, nothing that has to do with the DDA, but I think that I don't see the tide changing in the state of Florida when it comes to film incentives anytime soon. But I would argue politicians can follow good trends. And I think that if we all work together and someone finds a project that bounces from the Keys to downtown to Broward to West Palm and maybe even over to, as long as we all get what we would like out of that, I think that that's an interesting way for maybe something bigger to be able to scratch that. I also think, again, I will echo, our goal with the DDA is to support the small independent filmmakers. Someone making the next Moonlight that wants to make something here, that's something that we can support. That's something I think that we have the dollars for. And so I really encourage all of you to get involved. The easiest way to find out information about the DDA is A, obviously go to our website, miamidda.com. B, my name is Michael John. It's all one word, MICHAELJOHN, Green, on LinkedIn. My team posts all of our events and different things like that on LinkedIn. I have quite a few friends in this room that go to a lot of our networking events, participate in our board meetings. We have an entire arts and cultural committee that is really set up for every single person in this room. Come get involved. We accept unsolicited proposals. You should not miss the July 1st Creative Collaborator Grant date. I want to say 2 years ago, 79 people applied, 71 people got money. That's pretty good if you ask me for a grant process. As someone who's written a gazillion grants, it's much, much less than that 99% of the time. You shouldn't miss that. But if you have a great idea, you want to do something downtown, you want to do something that's good for the great diverse audience that Miami has, we're willing to listen to it and we're willing to see where our budget can help support that. I really appreciate all the gentlemen that are on this panel. I really appreciate Diliana and all of you guys for being in this room. It is a Saturday. It's extremely hot outside, but you're all trying to do something that continues to move and push the ball forward for Miami, which I personally believe is the greatest place in the world to live, work, and play. We want to be a part of that. We want to help you be successful. Please do reach out. My email also is very easy. It's green@miamidda.com. We accept unsolicited proposals. I wish you guys all the best of luck, and I hope you continue on this mission. And I do think, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but I do think the tides will change, and people want to hear stories from Miami. There's no more exciting place in the entire world, and we've got to be able to better articulate that. The last thing that I'm going to throw out there is a slight request for the gentleman up here, the commissioner sitting right here. To my knowledge and everything I do, data is important. I could be wrong. My friends over at the county have been in this a little much longer than I have. I've never seen a report that looks at a 40-year period and tries to connect the economic activity of Miami to film. That's what means something. How do you show the actual dollars? We can all say it's good, but if you don't connect it, for the guys up here, I got $25,000 on that report.
And that's actually something, thank you. And we definitely appreciate that. And I think, Josh, you can talk a little bit reporting from a national level. And then, Michael John, thank you very much. I think, there's an organization called Olsberg SPI that most of us has worked with that is the industry standard when it comes to getting economic impact reports on a wide scale. And you and I can talk later on about what that would look like to get a broad one done for Miami, because one hasn't been done. Yeah. Yeah. And from and then, to your a little more on your question before, Monica, organizations like Downtown Development, and you can actually set up nonprofit organizations whose only goal or only structure is granting funds to projects. And whether it's something that can get spearheaded by, a commissioner that says, hey, we'd love to have a nonprofit set up for Miami Beach, and then getting private individuals to donate to that nonprofit, and then it's managed by the nonprofit with board members. There's so many ways to structure things to be able to create those programs that will incentivize an area that doesn't have to just be government money. You can get really creative on how those are put together.
We talked about that a little bit, and I would say that you are sitting at a nonprofit organization that does just that. With the influx of people and the wealthy people that have come to Miami, I spent most of my career in wealth management. I will say this, and it's a little bit funny, but it's also true. The two most fearful things that any client could tell us is either A, they were getting divorced, or B, they wanted to put money in a movie. But wealthy people do want to put money into films. Why can't we all work together to really highlight FilmGate, put some money, work together, and then they could do something across South Florida to support the small independent filmmakers, but the larger films as well. I would argue that there are some wealthy people in the world that would probably give a pretty penny to go hang out with some of the gentlemen up here and Diliana at Cannes at the film festival. They are interested in that. It's kind of like the thing where basketball players want to be rappers, rappers want to be basketball players. Businessmen sometimes want to be around entertainers. And how do we leverage all of that for us to be successful? We already have the infrastructure. It's about using your brain power, our connections in local government to push to do something to change the landscape. I think that, you have to make the change that you want to see in the world. And I think that you're spot on in being able to say that the possibility for a nonprofit to be able to do that. We've got the infrastructure already here. They set something up great for us on a Saturday. How do we support them and build that? And we've talked about that a couple times before with our politicians and everything else to help supplement everything that you guys are doing. One of the great things, again, I worked in wealth management. One of the great things about a nonprofit is sometimes it can have a maximum amount of flexibility to be able to do things, where I think that most of us know government lacks flexibility.
Yeah, and Diliana, you've got 12 films in development, and so essentially FilmGate is acting as an incentive program right now by developing 12 feature films in the area for a de facto incentive program that that exists for what you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you to the fellows for submitting. They're in the crowd, waiting to ask questions, but they do need support. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation.
And Josh, why don't you hop in and talk a little bit about talking about studies, about what we're looking at from a national perspective as far as the study that's being done to show the impact.
And I just tell a quick story that I was told to me about Georgia when they began their state film incentive, which was a producer paid the per diem in $2 bills to all his workers, and then watched as the entire community all of a sudden had overflowing with $2 bills. And that just showed, in every dry cleaner, every florist, every restaurant, hotels, so many $2 bills. And the reason is because when you have film production or television production, it just supports all these local businesses. So in terms of the impact of an incentive, there's been lots of studies done in various states to show the true impact. But unfortunately, these are often same programs are targeted by reporters that want to claim it's a giveaway to entertainment and celebrities, which is not true. So we are working currently on a report that would talk about the economic impact of the federal incentive. We're not quite ready to release it yet, but we're using this Olsberg company, and MPA is paying for it, but we're gonna brand the report with Film USA, with all the entertainment unions, and it's going to be a really impressive when it's ready to come out. And essentially, for every $1 you spend on an incentive, you could get $7 injected into your community. So this is a no-brainer. And the one thing I'll say about Florida is that Senator Moody is on the Judiciary Committee, and which is the committee in Congress that deals with entertainment issues, and we're gonna work really hard on turning her into a champion for this industry, because there's no excuse for Florida not being in the top 5 in film production, and incentive would just drive production. So I would encourage, it may look hard right now, but encourage you to really push on a Florida-based incentive, and hopefully we can help by showing kind of the economic impact on the federal level.
Thank you for that, Josh. And
MJ Green, before you leave, let me know where I can get that $25,000 because I'm going to tell you about the report we got here. So I mentioned to you guys that we tracked $260 million in economic development last year, or I'm sorry, in production spend last year. That is through the reporting that we do. And we've got about 35 years of reporting in Palm Beach County, and that's something that we're sharing with our colleagues across the state. And I think maybe Chad could speak to that a little bit through the efforts of Film Florida. So with what you guys are going to do at Film USA with the report and what's happening at the statewide level, which I'll leave to Chad here to talk about, we have encouraged our colleagues to do like we do and provide that economic development report, because we know, historically speaking, for every dollar that we've received to market and promote the industry, and based on how much production is spent in our county, we have about a $138 return for every dollar spent. And so we've got the numbers, and we believe that if the rest of the state and other film commissions do that type of reporting too, we can bring that value back to Tallahassee, because right now Tallahassee looks at, well, we have no state income tax, so there's no money going into state coffers on this, and what's happening, all that ancillary spend, the restaurants, the construction sets, the plywood, everything that we've talked about. So Chad, do you want to talk?
Yeah, well, just in Florida Keys, after the first season of Bloodline, we did an economic study, and the first season they spent about $30 million for 8 episodes, and that $30 million generated $60 million of direct tourism impact for us, meaning people saw the show and came down. That was just season 1, and we did 3 seasons of Bloodline. And so if anyone wants a copy of that study, just email me. I'm happy to give you a copy of what we have already generated. And I'm actually working with Oldsboro right now too to do another economic study for the Florida Keys. So there's a lot of data. It's all about data. It's about being able to show the politicians hard numbers that they can't refute.
Yes. We'll collect all of if there are any studies that you'd like to share with everybody else in the audience, we have everybody's email. So we'd love to, or ideas on how to make an incentive happen in South Florida, we'll love to share it with everyone else. I know FilmGate has ideas too. So yeah, it'll be great. Sorry to.
No, all good. I'm sure we have more questions. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. So we're making a lot of great arguments for why the state should have an incentive. I want to hear what the counter arguments are, because it sounds to me like even if there is no money coming in because there's no state tax, businesses are the ones paying state tax along with property taxes for ad valorem. So it almost sounds like it would be a net zero value to the state, even if they had an incentive, right? Because they're not going to give more money than they're receiving. So what's the counter argument to why incentives shouldn't occur?
Well, the argument in the past has been in the way that that people had argued against the state having it. There's a super PAC called Americans for Prosperity, and so AFP is really the primary reason we do not have a state incentive right now. They were founded by the Koch brothers, and you can find an article online from Deadline in 2016 says how the Koch brothers killed the Florida Film Incentive, and basically they have major business interests in the state of Georgia and not in Florida. And so they work to kill incentives in anywhere around them. They did the same thing to North Carolina for a little while as well. And so what the argument from AFP was, and what people, would continue to say, was that, when the state of Florida was putting money forth for the tax incentive, they did not get an equivalent amount back in tax dollars. So they were ignoring actual spend and just talking about what the tax dollar return was. And so the argument is that it doesn't pay for itself because you're not getting the tax dollars returned in your spending, but it ignores the literal actual spend that productions are doing. Texas is a very good example. Texas, like Florida in many ways, except without the spectacular beaches and many other things that we have here, there is no income tax in the state of Texas, and so they structured it basically just off of what the state's been able to collect revenue-wise and carving out I think 1.5 billion over 10 years, and so basically 150 million every year for the state of Texas. And if anybody has watched Paramount Plus is the Taylor Sheridan channel, and all of that now shoots in Texas, and he shoots everything there. And so Texas, I think, is a great model for Florida because, again, we're very similarly structured and very politically angled the same way. If Texas can do it, why can't Florida do it?
And I would just add that it's politics a lot too. I spend a lot of time trying to convince Republican lawmakers to support these policies, and they're they get attacked in their primary elections for supporting Hollywood or supporting, celebrities. But again, when you have a celebrity attached to a project, they carry with them so many local jobs. So that's oftentimes we got to overcome that politics. And they did it in Texas. They brought together all these famous Texas actors. And so that's a program that could work. You never underestimate how celebrities can move policy.
And I'll say this, the tide is turning a little bit. We've seen it at the state level, where for years when we went up to Tallahassee, it was like, oh, here come the film folks again. All right. And now we go, and it just this last year, they're like, oh my goodness, film. What can we do? Is there something that can happen? Film Florida's seen some changes. Again, I'll defer to Chad as the senior representative here to talk about that. But the tide is turning, and there's a window of opportunity for those of you that work in politics. You got to jump in sometimes at the right moment. And you have a president who has said, I want a federal film incentive. He has set up ambassadors, right? I don't know how great their ambassadors are, but he set some ambassadors up. And so there's a window of opportunity. I'm sure we're all working to see what we can make happen.
I spent a lot of time with working with John Voight, and I didn't expect that to be the case. The president named these ambassadors, and we all kind of chuckled. And I have spent a lot of time with John Voight, getting him into the Oval Office on film incentives. So he's actually been a huge asset, surprisingly.
Ma'am, you had a question.
Wait, actually, I want to answer for you on a municipal level, just really quickly. Again, from the city of Miami Beach, I have been working with, you had mentioned earlier, development agreements, and I negotiated a development agreement that would give $100,000 to folks who report human trafficking. And then I have a affordable housing fund that I also want to put funding towards. So it's hard for me to say, we're going to set aside X amount for filmmakers. God love you. But when I have my residents who don't have places to live, they can't. So affordability is a big issue in Miami Beach. Yeah. So a lot of times movies and production and anything that's film related, or as you have stated, celebrity related, is seen as a luxury and not a need. And I have to help people that need places to live and food to eat and those type of affordability issues. So on a local level, that's why we don't have millions of dollars for incentives. It's very, very tough when there's other issues. I just wanted to answer that on a municipal level.
Yeah, well, it's hard. Like, it's hard to do it at a municipal level, right? That's the whole point. That's why everybody wants the state, to be able to come in, because not every, and federal, because not every little municipality, not that Miami Beach is little, can support like that. But unfortunately, that's what Florida has had to do over the last, 10 years or so.
Hi, everybody. So again, E.B. Saldez representing Mayor Danilo Living-Cava's office, your Miami-Dade County Mayor. So just some resources I do want to share. Even though, like we said, like the film office is no longer active within the county, we still have our cultural affairs department, and there is a rotating set of programs and grants, just some that I wanted to share with you here. Our festival and special events grants, community grants, cultural development grants, international cultural partnerships grants, tourist development council grants that can support, again, like if your project has the capacity to support tourism activity, hospitality, something maybe perhaps like a film screening, for example, could be eligible for a grant. So please come to see me if you want any more information to be connected, but definitely just follow online. Another tip I have, please follow your county commissioner. Okay, they are going to be your biggest advocate in the county in regards to projects like this. So, make sure to subscribe to their email newsletter, stop by their district office or the government center office, make that relationship, because also, politicians, much like anybody else, their eyes and ears can only reach so many rooms at a time, right? So you are, as a resident, as a taxpayer, their eyes and ears on the ground. So make that relationship, go out to their outreach events. I know politicians are more active than ever, especially like on social media. You can DM them now, they're like, so take advantage of that proximity is something that I would definitely encourage.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And I think, one thing that's difficult as well is a lot of people, those are all great resources, but there's not one place or person that can say, hey, here are all the resources that you have, which is why film commissioners are important to a community, because they do help as that single resource point to be able to share all the resources that are available for whether it's big productions down to student and small productions as well. So not saying that you guys should go out and find a new film commissioner right now, but it would certainly help with spreading the word, because they can be that point person for marketing your destination and for all the other things that that are important like that.
Hi, my name is Yonder. One of the things that you mentioned about entertainment, right? Everyone stays away. The politicians love to stay away. Sorry. Politicians love to stay away from the ideas of entertainment, but politicians love the whole job creation thing, right? And as a professor of entrepreneurship, I get to sort of navigate in that world. And so if we can find a way to tell them, you're creating jobs, and like over and over and over. Trump is really good at saying things over and over. And if it's about, I don't know how we can change that or make it a marketing thing, say we're creating jobs, we're pumping money into your, I don't know, how do you do that?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point, and that's the very argument we make. And when we met with the White House on this subject, a gentleman named Kevin Hassett, who's one of the top economic advisors for the president, said this federal film incentive sounds like a MAGA proposal because it's for American workers in America. And I'm a Democrat, but that was music to my ears. And I have repeated that a lot of times. This is a MAGA proposal. We need Republican support. And so you lean in on the jobs. And President Trump, unlike historically Republicans, don't like industrial policy where the government gets involved in businesses, and that's no longer the case with this president. So he doesn't mind industrial policy. So you're right. It's all about the jobs. But America, we created the entertainment industry. We should be doing the work here. So you're exactly right on the argument. It has to be about jobs.
And it's not just the great thing about the film and television industry is it creates jobs, but it creates high-paying jobs, right? Really well-paying jobs versus the other jobs available for it. So that's the message we got to get out for sure.
On the jobs front, great message at the national level. I'll just remind you again, at the state level, it's always been, when we look at jobs, because we don't have a state income tax, we don't see dollars going back into the state coffers as a result of those jobs. But I would ask you all to, if you're interested on these dollars and on the state level issue, to look at a report from 2018 from Tax Watch. So Tax Watch did a report on the film industry in 2018. They're an independent watchdog organization, but they obviously lean a little bit more conservative, and they're in full support of our industry. So I think for us, particularly now with this conversation of property taxes or homestead, kind of doing away with some of those property taxes, we know that it probably have to be made up on the sales side and commercial side. And so I think one of the things we need to do is talk about the impact we have on those ancillary businesses and how that will then generate, some revenues there, because it's how we impact not just the jobs that we create for our industry people, but the ecosystem that exists, the hotels that the crew stay at, the restaurants they eat at. I mean, when we talk infrastructure, it's not just studios and how many people work in the industry, it's everything else that goes into it. And hopefully we can beat that message too. It's not just the jobs and the direct people, but the indirect people that this is benefiting.
Well, and there is an appetite that's starting to change, and I'll get to it next. In the state of Florida, I don't know how many people are familiar with A Land Remembered, which is a book that came out in the 80s that, is essentially the history of Florida. Well, A Land Remembered is being turned into a completely independently produced TV series by Todd Wiseman, who is a Tampa-based filmmaker, went away to New York and LA for a long time, has come back. And the state of Florida has put $500,000 towards that project. And so the state is starting to put money towards certain projects. And that particular one is a good example with what Todd is doing. And they've already shot the first part of the season. They'll do the second part of that season later on. Tampa is giving them another $500,000. And so they've already gotten $1 million from state and regional incentives. I think they're getting some from Orange County now as well. And so there is an appetite at the state level, and it traditionally has had bipartisan support. It just had been the Speaker House kills it every year because he's paid by AFP. I can say that because I don't work for any county government anymore. But that's the reality of why it had been killed by the state for so many years. But there is an appetite, and that is starting to move forward as far as that goes.
Hi everybody, my name is Gustavo Briand. I live in Miami Beach. I'm a filmmaker. So the question that I have for you is two questions. So the first one is like, is there any way that we could do like a list of when we had the incentive in Florida, what we were doing, how were we helping people and jobs and whatever? And then when these things went to Canada and to Georgia, whatever, like how much we have lost in jobs and revenue, because that would be an eye opener for people to see, wow, we need to bring that back here, because I mean, even though it's temporary jobs, but they keep reoccurring. And the other one, it's all redundant, what I'm saying. But the other one is, I'm a small filmmaker. I've been doing films forever, but I just graduated film school last year. So professionally, right? So, I mean, when we're starting, it's like we don't have these big productions. So, I mean, where the state sometimes or Broward offers something and it starts in $250,000. So, I mean, so how do we ever start and break that shelf? That you should guys lower, whoever is listening to me, the glass limit so we can start, because I mean, there's no way.
So if the first part of your question, if you go to filmflorida.org, I believe is the website, they have a list of every single incentive in the state on a local level and how you qualify, all the different levels for that. They also have a lost business map or lost production map. And that's stuff that's actually come to the state or could have inquired about coming to the state and ended up going somewhere else strictly because of incentive. So there's two resources for you right there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
It seems like this is one of the first times you guys have come together and spoken together, or have you previously spoken to MJ Green or each other, or is this one of the first times you've spoken together?
Well, as a group, a lot of the film people around the state, whether it's former film commissioners like myself, but still involved in the industry from a national level, and the Florida film commissioners, we all do get together at quarterly meetings with Film Florida. And so there's a quarterly and annual meeting, and anybody in the room can join Film Florida. I think the minimum is like $50 a year or something like that. And students and a member. And then you're all welcome to come to the quarterly and annual meetings for the state and participate and be able to hear more of these discussions. And then, Josh, like he talked about the coalition that we have on a national level, where Josh and I are on a Zoom call every 2 weeks, along with Katie Pryor, president of Film USA, and myself as VP. So there are a lot of internal conversations going on. We've never done it in South Florida here before, so this is new to be able to share all the information with all of you in the room.
Because I think a lot of good has come from it, and but there's a lot of maybe misconceptions that people, like Josh, you were saying, like people are saying, why would we give money to Tom Cruise? But Tom Cruise is a business, right? These celebrities are businesses employing, like you said, over 500 people. That's a large tax bracket. So if you're already doing this, getting together more, I think that's great.
Yeah, no, we, from the beginning, when I got to the MPA, we wanted to talk, local commissioners are where all the action happens. You guys know what's happening in your communities, and you have outreach to people in this room that are the real people on the ground. So it's very useful us to be working with Tony and Katie with Film USA, because they know it. When I have an issue and I want to affect a politician, we were doing meetings on 181 or other issues. I would say, hey, Tony, can you get me, I'm about to have a meeting with a member of Congress from Oregon. Can you get me the Oregon commissioner? And they would deliver that, and they would be in our meetings with us. So this federal local coordination has been going really well, and I'm really grateful to Tony for his help.
Yeah, and Josh, maybe talk a little bit about how our local politicians can help on a national level, just like you were talking there, like how Monica, what you can do. If you can't do it in Miami Beach, what can you do to add fuel and information to the national, dialogue?
Yeah, just the local voices talking to your state representatives and your federal representatives on the very kind of arguments we've been making today are just hugely influential. I spent 20 years working on the Hill. You might think that you don't have an impact when you address members of Congress or state representatives. The opposite is true. When they hear from local constituents, local businesses, it moves them. They always want to hear from local voices. So when I set up meetings with, let's say, an Oregon office, it's fine to have myself and, a representative from the Directors Guild or a representative from IATSE, which is the union you all know that does film work. The most important person is that local film commissioner, because and you can watch the staff or you can watch the member when they know they're talking to a constituent, their eyes light up and they really listen. So don't underestimate how your personal lobbying and building relationships with members of your state legislature or county commissioners, they have a real impact. So use your voice, lobby, it makes a difference.
Yeah, because ideally, I think you were mentioning, how do you give funds when you're feeding, when you're trying to house people? And I don't think, I think you might have been talking to smaller grants, but of course, bringing back incentives and getting the Bad Boys sequel back in Miami, of course, that would help feed and house certain people in categories.
I mean, shoot, they're doing Miami Vice 85 as a feature film, and right now that's not going to shoot in Miami, which is sacrilege. Sacrilege, since that TV series literally created the new Miami, basically.
And the reason Bad Monkey left is straight because California improved their incentive, and they just followed the money. So if Florida had an incentive, they would have made more money from Bad Monkey, all these millions of dollars flowing into local economies, than they would have spent on it in the first place.
So in Bad Monkey season 2, season 1 they shot here in Miami and Monroe County, but season 2 they got a grant from the state of California, $20 million to go back and shoot it in Los Angeles. We obviously can't compete with $20 million. I mean, we did get some work out of it. They did come back, but the problem was they brought all their crew from LA, because they didn't use, they had some local crew, but for the most part, the whole thing was just kind of a, hey, thanks for working on the show in LA. We're going to take you to Florida for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And so all of the crew came in from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
They didn't want to switch them out, it was like the last thing they were shooting. So, but it's maddening.
And what California does, California has a program that if you relocate a show from another state, and so one of the reasons Bad Monkey shot season 1 here is they knew they were going to relocate for season 2 because they knew they would get the extra bump in incentives by doing one season here and then getting a bump in incentives by relocating for another season. It's the same thing that happened to Ballers as well. Ballers shot here, and then that last season in LA was horrible because it left South Florida.
Yes.
Right, you still want, yeah, exactly. Yeah, at least get one. Yeah.
Shit, but I own a Bourbon lighting house, so we did that one.
Yeah.
And for an house, it was a couple $1 million by doing season 1, and we did in the Keys season. What they shot over there, we did Bourbon lighting there, and we did Ballers when they were here. We did Bloodline all 3 years, and the federal incentive to me is the most important thing. Just to get some sort of incentive, and then hopefully the local counties will throw something in above that, just for them to want to shoot here. Without a federal incentive, I just don't see that.
Yeah, Miami used to be number 1 in the state of Florida, and Florida was number 3 in the country, and that is all flipped on its head now.
So the federal incentives is supposed to be 20%, correct?
There has been we came together as a coalition and made a proposal, and that was a 20% incentive. And additionally, you could get a bump of 5% if you're an independent film, 5% if you're shooting in a economically disadvantaged area.
Right.
So, but this is just a proposal. We don't have legislative language yet, but yes, it would be 20% plus bump ups.
And you would suggest
Of your wage spending. So all the money you spend on your employees, and you would need to have 75% of your employees be American residents. So that's how it works.
and then maybe a county, let's say the county or a city can say plus 5% if you hire local staff, a local crew, and then we can kind of add up those percentages to make it to, let's say, 35 or 40 to compete with the world, correct?
Correct. And I think if we actually did get a federal film incentive, I have a feeling Florida would then, as a state, say, okay, we need to get in the game here. We have such unbelievable locations and unparalleled places to shoot. So I have a feeling if federal incentive came through, the Florida legislator would follow suit.
I have a question back here. I'm a fellow from FilmGate, but also I run a festival, a Peruvian film festival, and I just realized going to many other festivals. I have the privilege to go to Berlin and Cannes, that we're not working here co-productions. Like this is incredible city, like it's the informal capital of Latin America. We're talking about Dominican Republic. I'm from Peru. Peru gives money for co-production. Mexico gives money. All these countries, Pro Imágenes in Colombia, we're not taking advantage of all this money that came from all these countries, and they're shooting overseas in Spain, in you name it. When we have here, a beautiful, Miami, all these cities like are great. I wonder if you're exploring that, or you're already working on something on that in the co-production, especially with Latin America.
Well, Chad and I were just in Cannes, just got back from Cannes a little while ago, and that's we have our Film USA pavilion that we have in Cannes representing, the United States and the business of film there. 20 or so film commissions we had from across the U.S. this year. That's one of the number one questions that we get are, what are the co-production opportunities in the U.S.? And unfortunately, co-productions are treaties between countries. And so the U.S. does not have any official co-production treaties to be able to do that. And so what co-production means for everyone in the room basically is if, Spain and Norway have a co-production treaty, that means you can shoot in Norway and still access the Spain incentive program because they have a treaty between the two, and vice versa. So the U.S. does not have that. And because the U.S. doesn't have a national incentive, then a co-production also doesn't make sense. You would have to do either a state co-production with another area or regional co-production with another area. None of those exist, basically. And so you try and do co-ventures, but then it still becomes tricky because it's not, the state of Georgia is not going to give Spain, money for shooting in Spain. It has to shoot in Georgia. And so that's what the co-production is. And there are treaties between countries to be able to do that. We don't have it. And Josh, I don't know if there's any conversation along with the incentive about co-productions. I doubt it because it's going to be jobs based.
Yeah, no, that's a really hard issue, and you explained it well. And there's not any easy solution for that, unfortunately. U.S. doesn't have a cultural minister, and we don't have an ability to do treaties with other countries right now. So that is a frustrating problem.
May I? I'm gonna add something.
Yes, because I know you're working on something, Diliana. Yeah.
In conversation, and it's a great question. So I sit on the Miami-Dade County's film board. I was appointed by at the time Commissioner Higgins, now Mayor Higgins, and Jeannie oversees that board too. So we have been talking about regional co-productions because we have spoken to. So I'm quite close with the government of France. They made me a knight a couple of years back. So I have to slide it in there. But
little humble brag there.
Humble brag. But there are certain countries that are, of course, very, very much into filming with Florida and South Florida, and France being one of them, Brazil, Argentina. So there is a possibility to do regional co-productions. So let's say it's the south of France, Florida, or South Florida, or maybe like regional cities, or let's say the Sao Paulo region can co-produce with the Florida region as opposed to it being a co-production. What do you think of that? That was the kind of the conversation that we've been having with certain government officials from these different countries.
Yeah, and that sounds terrific. Yeah, if you can sneak around and do it that way, that's fantastic.
Thank you. So, I mean, putting it out there to think about.
And talking about partnerships and collaborations, during the pandemic, my first film was shot during the pandemic, and I went to West Palm. It was a friend of ours. It was based on a book that I had. But the way we did it was a friend of mine had $10,000. Said, okay, let's do this. Pandemic happens. Like, oh my God, this is crazy. But we focused on what we could do versus what we couldn't do. The budget ballooned to $46,000. But the thing that was very unique at that time was the PPP loan. We borrowed the PPP loan, and because the rules were, and we followed the rules, if you have 70% of people who are giving wages to will be forgiven. my first film cost us $0. So because we did the right thing, above board, borrowed the money, paid, and forgiveness.
You're not advocating for another pandemic, are you?
No. I'm not advocating for another pandemic, but is there a way in terms of building in collaborations? What about banks? Is there ways to talk to banks about another type of incentive or financing? I don't know what the right question to ask, but is there a way to have something similar to the PPP loan and grow from there?
One that gets forgiven.
Not necessarily forgiven, but it's just
film finance can be a complicated structure on what you do, and the minimum guarantee foreign presale market isn't what it used to be, and so it's really tough from an independent film perspective as far as that goes now, and that's why you have a lot of there's business like Bondit, Buffalo 8, and 3 Point Capital that will loan against state incentives and minimum guarantees and things like that, but that's a whole other workshop about film finance. Basically, that's a little more complicated.
Of Greenlight is if we have it financed, and that's very difficult. I do crowdfunding and stuff like that, but again, the greenlighting outside of incentives is money, right? So
yes, money can be hard to find for film is the short answer to the question.
This microphone's got to go this way. Who's got questions?
Thank you. We have time for 15 more minutes, so let's ask questions. Anybody else have questions or something to propose? Josh, yeah.
You said your search for federal tax incentives is a long-term goal. How long have you been at this? Or I'm curious what your...
Has it been 20 years or so? Is it what you're asking? Has it been long?
Yeah.
What can we expect?
Well, of course, our goal is as fast as possible, but Congress often moves very slowly. So I think this is something that I think the Democrats are going to take at least one branch of Congress back, and I think this is an issue that the Democratic Congress could work on with President Trump. So he's in office for another 2.5 years. I don't know if if there's a future Republican president, they'd be as interested in the industry. So I think we have this window in the next 2.5 years to really make progress here. But I'm a federal lobbyist, but if I could pass nothing for 10 years and no one would fire me because it's really hard to pass anything. But it's a unique group because we have Democrats and Republicans, red states and blue states interested. What we need to do to succeed is not make this a California thing. This has got to be a Florida thing. Texas, Georgia. We need to convince Republican lawmakers that this helps red states. Florida's a red state. So I can't predict how long it takes. I can just tell you that we have enormous amount of people working enormously hard on this. I've been at it for a year and a half, but we've made great progress in that time. The studios I represent had to be brought along to endorse the process. And we've been aggressively working with this White House to try to bring them along. I spend time trying to find right-leaning actors and producers that can have better messaging with this White House. So I'm trying to, I saw that Nate Bargatze was at the UFC event. So I just met someone that knows him. I'm going to reach out to them and see if I can get him to speak to the president about this. So we're literally trying to send actors and producers to see the president on the federal incentive. What our Republicans in the House are telling us is they need the president to endorse the concept because he has said unhelpful things in the past about tariffing the industry. By the way, you can't tariff a digital good, so it doesn't make sense. So we're trying to bring him along, and we're trying to get the president to say, hey, Congress, you should look at the federal film incentive, and that'll release Republican lawmakers to be able to be for this thing, which so they don't, if once the president supports it, these MAGA lawmakers will follow suit. So our current goal is to have the president speak out on this. We just sent John Voight into the Oval Office a couple months ago. They had a really good communication. We even had a truth post written and delivered to the president's person that does that. And we're just, there's been things happening in the world that have kept him busy, but we are trying. I can just promise you we're trying. We want it yesterday.
We have a question from our online audience, and it's specifically to what's going to happen when property taxes and laws change in Florida, if they do change.
Don't
your
vote
thoughts on
to get rid of property taxes, first of all. As a Florida homeowner, I will vote to keep my property taxes as they are, because you start chopping that away, we're all in trouble with where the money has to go for other things. And I own a home in Florida, and I pay taxes as a Florida homeowner. So Josh, you may not be familiar, but there's going to be, I think, on the ballot this opportunity to increase our homestead exemption from $50,000 to $250,000, which would really kill the amount of revenue coming in via property taxes. So I would say, as individuals that vote in the state of Florida, you have to vote against that. I'm not someone who's generally out there lobbying in politics, but that's a bad idea for the state of Florida. We get a lot of money in tourism tax revenue coming in that really, gives us a lot going on in the state. We can afford a couple of bucks in property taxes. Small soapbox. AJ, anything to add?
No comment.
He still works for government. I don't.
Any final questions from the audience? And then you have some hand network.
I have a question. Comment question. So part of the we've heard a lot about production incentives that have to do with on-set productions, and right, but we haven't talked about all of the production that happens, with post-production, pre-production, right, digital studios like ours, and how our incentives, or are there programs that can help studios, like, for example, like the example that I can give is that we're now given what we're calling it a strategic discount, 30%, because we're a studio that's small, brand new, but we're competing with nationwide large studios, and we're doing a lot of work with Georgia, and they're asking us, either you move to Georgia or you give us a set 30%. So I'll be able to do that for a couple more bits, a couple more projects, but soon enough, I'm going to have to say, okay, let's move to Georgia.
Yeah, you're a post-production house, basically.
Pre-production, production, and we kind of own the entire process.
We do virtual production, so we start from pre-production all the way through. Sure. And so to compete with Georgia companies, we have to offer a similar discount, but it comes out of our pocket. And at some point, we have to ask ourselves, is it worth opening up an office in Georgia?
Yeah, and I think, and I'll let anybody else chime in on that as well. Part of that will be if we get the a state incentive in place. You wanted to include post-production in there. Texas, in their new one, they added like an additional 1% for post, which is pointless. But from a national perspective, because it's labor, post would still count, because you're just talking about labor.
Yeah, for a federal incentive, pre and post, anything you're spending on wages would count. And also these state incentives, everyone's different. So yeah, Georgia might require you to be a Georgia resident, but I don't know if all states are like that.
You have to be a resident. You start office there and spend $203,000. Pay you, right? And then
You pay one person to sit in a WeWork for. I'll take that $250 to sit in a WeWork in Atlanta for.
The UK, France, California, all of Canada, they're already including digital production as their main incentive channel, right? Because the film industry has been changing for over 2 decades. The last 5 years have been a lot more visible. So I mean, it's fine if you can get actors and crews to film in a location, but that you don't need as many actors and crews in a location. You can do a lot of this work digitally already, right? So I'm thinking, I will hope that when you guys are thinking about these things, that you would include post-production, production, and digital studios in that line.
Yeah, definitely including them. And yeah, if you're a worker, we want to include you. The whole goal of the federal incentive is to help support American production, American workforce.
And at the local level, our situation, for example, doesn't apply to a lot of what we've been talking about, because we don't employ crews and cameramen, etc. We're not.
Yeah, and especially anything that's tourism based, right? Because that's a big part of it then too, is post-production.
And I'm sure there's a way I'm sure there's a way to incorporate or to benefit from what we do, for there to be a mutual benefit somehow. But I think what Carlos, maybe what he's trying to say is that we have to evolve with the way that the film industry is evolving, because looking at things only in the sole purpose of, how does our production, our production is not, I'm sorry, I'm not helping out here. I'm at least even.
Yeah, I understand where you're going. You're saying, that the technology is changing the industry rapidly, and it's not just always boots on the ground in a city or a state shooting anymore. So how does, from a digital perspective, what is that incentive or the ways to, help small businesses work?
But you employ yourself, your workers. Yeah.
Like we go between 5 and 10 people. We're 10 people now. 5 people we employed. Like I have to employ a couple in Georgia. Then we have one in Los Angeles, LA. We have one in Arizona. We have 2 in the UK, 1 in Germany, right? So it's a very fluid workflow. And I've been working like that for 6 years. When I was at Netflix, it was the same thing. I have my team all over the world, right? At Marvel was the same thing. But as a small studio, I don't have the pockets or the reach that Marvel and Netflix has. So then all of a sudden I have to give $150,000, $250,000 of a project just so that I can get the project, so I can compete with Netflix or with Amazon or with, you know what I mean? So we'll stay here for as long as we can, but eventually, if we don't see that.
As your business starts to grow, it doesn't make financial sense. Yeah. And so before we wrap up, we'll see if there's any more questions, but maybe we should go down the line. Any last comments? Also, at each of us say website, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever we can be found for the virtual audience that's watching and anybody in the room that wants to reach out to. So Josh, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I just want to thank FilmGate and Tony for inviting me. And you can find me on you can find me on LinkedIn, Joshua Rogan, and please do reach out. I love connecting with folks on the ground doing this work. So really appreciate being here, and please do reach out.
So I'm down in the Florida Keys and live in Key West. Best way to get a hold of me, my website's chadnewman.com, chad@chadnewman.com. Love to chat and continue the conversation. And I do have a question. I want to learn more about this French night thing. That sounds very interesting.
Alberto Jordan. I have social media like everybody else, but do not follow me. Instead, go to the Film Commission, pbfilm.com. So PB as in Palm Beach, film.com. If you want to see a little bit about that programming I was talking about, we broadcast that online at the palmbeaches.tv. So for you creatives, take a look at what it is we're sponsoring, see if there's anything that kind of vibes with what you guys do or could do, and connect with us if there's anything out there that we can do for you. For our socials, just Google Palm Beach County Film Commission. We're on just about every platform, and you'll find us. Thank you all. Like our friend who left, he said, it's hot out there. Thank you guys for joining us. Sincerely, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for taking the time to listen to us.
Yeah, and like everyone else across all the socials, my last name is spelled Armour, A-R-M-E-R. So Tony Armour, and just at Tony Armour on Instagram. Same thing on LinkedIn. FilmUSA.org for our Film USA website where you can join our mailing list. And then TonyArmour.com. And like Chad, just my name, Tony at TonyArmour.com as well if anybody wants to reach out. Any final questions or words from Diliana before we wrap up?
Sure. So thank you so much as well. Thank you, Tony, for helping us organize this awesome panel. Thank you, Alberto, for representing West Palm Beach. Thank you, Chad, for coming from my favorite place, the Keys. And then thank you, Josh, for being here. And I know we're going to get this national incentives. I know you're awesome. I believe it. So for the awesome audience, thank you also for being here and asking great questions. Also, the people online. I used to have an office on this side of this space, and I watched bad boys be filmed, just like the chase scene basically happened with the Porsche back and forth. I saw Betty LaFeo, Ugly Betty, be filmed at the corner, pretending that it's New York because you can shoot for New York here. So I know that we'll get film production back in Miami and the entertainment business. So it's not just the pre-production. It's not just the film production, but also post is so important. Together with Play Art Studios, we're making dome experiences happen, planetariums, like what's happening at the Cosm or at the Sphere. These are also, that's a part of the ecosystem. Gaming and immersive, also part of the ecosystem. So from small, Unique, I have been here, George from Unique, has been supporting the business of film for so many years. And he's been so gentle with us by giving us independent prices so we can survive as independent creators as well. Thank you, George. So amazing people in the audience. Yeah, once again, thank you for being here. I know that there's going to be a Greenlight Florida part 2, because I think the conversations and the scheming needs to continue. But I do hope that in a couple of years, we're going to look outside and there'll be film crews and there'll be post-production houses thriving and on a bit.
Will, since you had this virtually, are you recording it as well? Are you going to post that anywhere? And will you post that on your website or anywhere for people to watch then?
It's on our YouTube. We'll share wherever you want to post, and we'll do follow-ups with the different documents that we promised as well, so people to enlighten themselves.
Great.
Thank you so much. We still have mimosas, by the way, so please join us.
Have your fill of mimosas. Just don't drive when you leave.
There's, yeah, now we talk house.
Hello.
Trying your pay. Oh, we did camping. In other.
Hello, everyone. Before anyone leaves, I welcome you all to the stage so that we can get a nice group photo, please. Let's go to the stage. FilmGate team, help me tell people for the group photo, please. Thank you. And let's help clear space on the stage also. FilmGate team. Thank you.